Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Success is a Choice podcasting network. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler, and today we have a very special guest, former NFL fullback, now current head football coach at Oxford High School in Michigan. Zach Line joins us. Zach, appreciate you join the Success is a Choice podcast show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, now I played college football, and I was the third wide receiver in college. And I say that now, and people think, oh, so you must have played a lot. But we had, I believe, 5 fullbacks on our roster. We actually used only 2 wide receivers because we had a fullback. Fullbacks, you guys are something special, man. Fullbacks are a different breed. You guys are true football players.
Well, it's I would say the hardest spot to get in the NFL because there's 32 teams and probably 16, 17 teams using one. So if you get one of those spots, you better hold on to it.
Now, was there growing up? Obviously, you played football. You graduated. You played at Oxford High School, where you're now coaching. Then you went to play football at SMU. Were there players that you idolize? When you're 10 years old, going out Thanksgiving, going out in the backyard after you watch the Lions play on Thanksgiving Day. You go out. Was there people who did you emulate? Who did you want to be growing up?
So this is a good question because it was one that I got asked at the combine a ton, and my favorite player growing up was Steve Yzerman. So it has nothing to do with football at all. I played football all the way up until, hockey all the way until middle school, and then I started playing football and wrestling and those types of things. But Steve Yzerman was my guy. He was a blue collar leader. Just it seemed like the kind of guy that guys wanted to play for and play with. So that's kind of who I emulated my character and the way I worked after.
Yeah, the captain, Stevie Y. Absolutely. Well, you ended up becoming an NFL player. You ended up becoming a captain of New Orleans Saints. What is that like to be a leader in an NFL locker room? Because most of us have not been that, but we've been maybe a leader in our high school locker room, a leader in maybe our college locker room. Is it much different at the pro level as opposed to the college or the high school when you're a leader?
Yeah, I think you're in a room of grown men, so it's a rare case where you get the leader, like it's the guy, and that's the Drew Breeses of the world. That's those are special level guys. But in any locker room, I think really what we're trying to install here in Oxford is there's multiple leaders. While might not be vocal, you might be the guy that holds guys accountable. You might be the guy that makes sure that the energy's right, make sure that guys are doing the right thing. So, I would say in the NFL locker room, you have certain corners. You got your running backs over here, you got your quarterbacks over here, and you got your O-line. And in every group, there's that one guy that the position group kind of follows. So you're just making sure your people are staying in line. With COVID and all that, I know they spaced everybody out, so I don't know how it works anymore. I got out before any of that.
So you mentioned Drew Brees. What made him so special?
He was just detailed, right? So he wasn't gonna hoot and holler. He just led by example, and he would, right? Drew could deliver because his preparation, his standards were so high that he could hold you accountable as well. And guys didn't want to let him down on game day or at practice because we saw him every day. And, at 9 o'clock, he was in the training room. At this time, he was entering the field house. So he was just so detailed and never took a step backwards. Even when he was injured or had some kind of, bruise or injury that you knew he was battling through, he would stick to his routine. He'd be the first guy in the building. You'd see him going through his film, standing up in his quarterback stance. It was just the small things along the way that he didn't have to say anything to make everybody around him rise.
Well, you played for Sean Payton, who has an amazing reputation, a lot of success in the NFL, but you've also been around a lot of other coaches in the NFL, head coaches and assistant coaches. Is there a certain quality that you see from a coach that you look at and you're like, man, that coach has got it? Like what is a quality of a good coach, especially in the NFL, but it could be at any level?
I think at the end of the day, you can have the guys that are yelling, you can have the guys that are screaming, you can have the guys that are calm, relaxed, but at the end of the day, if they're consistent, that's the best coach to me, right? If you on the front end, you have your expectations of what you believe and what you want out of us, and then there's no surprises along the way. Where if something else were to happen, you're not gonna that's outside the realm. You understand and you can adapt to those situations. But to me, it's just being consistent, preaching the same message. I think you see the teams that win national championships and do big things. You go through all the interviews, all the guys will almost say the exact same message. And that's coming from team meetings. That's coming from the way the coaches are. All the coaches are on the same page and they're all saying the same thing. So if you can get a consistent message and, the core beliefs of what you want, and you got to pick the right ones at the beginning of the season and, hope that that's the message for the year. But to me, it's consistency.
So I mentioned that you're a true football player because you were a fullback, tough guy. Is there one particular block or some memory? You scored some touchdowns, but was there a time where you just went through the line and you just leveled somebody that you remember, or just something where you were a true football player?
I got my last year of playing was probably the most, they say the flow state. It was finally the year where I knew I was going to retire after the season. So I was just having fun. Wasn't worried about getting cut. Wasn't worried about any of these things. I wish I had done that early in my career. But we were playing the Philadelphia Eagles that year. I came through the line, and Mark Ingram followed me through. And it was to close out the game. I probably had 2 snaps the whole game, but got in at that time. We ran a lead play, and I had a nice block, and Mark broke free. So that's one I'll always remember. Is kind of like the one you get up and it's like an involuntary flex, right? So it just kind of happens at times.
Now the inverse, was there a time someone just laid you out or blindsided you, or you were like, there's a time where you were like, oops, that wasn't cool?
Sometimes you can do all the planning and pad leverage and all the things right, but fullback's one of the positions where my running back coach Kirby Wilson was said, you're a gunfighter. Sometimes you're going to get hit too. So there's a couple. I know Dallas a few years ago, and I had one against Indianapolis Colts where I knew coming in, this guy, it didn't matter if the running back went right and I went left, he was chasing fullbacks. So his job, I think, was just, you are taking on fullbacks. And I knew I had to bring it that game. We both brought it. We both left the game after the first set.
So are there players that you love watching now? What are the players that when you sit down on your couch to watch Sunday football or whatever, that you're like, man, that player, I respect that player a great deal. That player can play.
There's a lot of them. I appreciate watching my friends that I play with. So I'll watch Adam Thielen. I'll watch Taysom Hill, Anzalone. But I like to watch and see where my coaches go as well. So, I was watching last night. It was the USFL. It was CJ, our receivers coach. He's now the head coach there. He's calling plays. So just hearing the same lingo and seeing how he runs it, versus how Sean did it. Now I get to watch Sean. Now I'll get to watch Pete Carmichael kind of run his show in New Orleans, and I get to watch Dan Campbell out here. So it's fun to see the coaching trees go and how they took, Sean's leadership.
Well, you mentioned coaching tree. You are now part of people's coaching tree. Sean Payton or any of the coaches you've had, you're now a limb on that coaching tree because you're a coach. You are now a head football coach. You just finished up your 3rd year at Oxford High School, your alma mater. Why did you want to go into coaching?
I always felt like I was already a leader in the room. And it really started with the Vikings. I had a fullback. Jerome Felton was above me. He was an all-pro fullback the year before, and he was sitting the first 3 games. And I remember he was coaching me up, and I thought it was really cool that a veteran guy was, and a guy that I was trying to take his spot was coaching me. So I took that approach the rest of my career. Once I became a starter, I was always helping out, the guy they brought in during camp to be the backup fullback. And normally they only keep one, but I wanted to make sure this guy knew that I cared. And if I had injuries or anything else, he would be able to step in and help the team or go on and have a successful career. So I've always kind of taken that leadership approach. Our longtime coach at Oxford was leaving. He was here for 30, 40 years. I couldn't even tell you the number, but he's a legend in Oxford. A guy that was pivotal for my career, mentality wise. And he was leaving, and it was right at the end of my career. I just thought it was a smooth transition. We already had a house here. I love the school district. I like the community. So it was kind of a no brainer for our family.
Well, from a coaching standpoint, from a football standpoint, what's been kind of the toughest transition going from being a player in the NFL to coaching high school? It's not obvious. Coaching is never rainbows and butterflies all the time. There's always some difficulties along the way, but what's been some of the biggest adjustments going from being a player to a coach?
I think for me, you didn't have to, obviously you didn't have to plan as much. You didn't have to have practice scripts and camp schedules and fundraisers and handing out equipment and making sure that family vacations are in line with all that kind of stuff is what it is. But it really, to me, came down to not being a billboard my first year. As a leader, we hear all these great quotes, and as a player, I had them all written down in journals, and I put them all into one area where I could find them. I felt like my first couple of seasons, I wasn't being myself. I was being other coaches. I was giving quotes that meant something to me, but weren't pertinent to that point of where we were as a team. So the biggest transition I made was being myself, right? You can use those quotes, but they don't have to force feed them onto your team. So I think that was the biggest realization I had, because I wasn't enjoying it as much as I wanted to, because I wasn't being me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what is you as a coach? What is kind of your vision? When people think of Zach Line as a coach, what are they going to think of?
I hope they know I'm fair, I'm consistent, and I'm definitely more of a fun coach. I'm gonna hoot and holler, and when you do something right, you're gonna hear me in the background getting pumped up. I know when I was a player, when I had those energetic coaches, and that's just who I am. I felt more free. I felt less fear. Because there's a time for punishment and reinforcing good habits, but again, I think that comes back to front end expectations. So the kids are aware of what they are. To me, those are effort. That's a no excuses, non-negotiable to me is effort. Our preparation's got to be there, and then being a good teammate. So none of the things that I require of my team require any talent. It's going out and working hard.
Now, is that in part because that's kind of the way you played football, the way that you took the approach? Obviously, not that talent doesn't matter. Obviously you had talent. But just that, nose to the grindstone, work ethic, get it done regardless of the circumstance.
For sure. I was never nervous later in my career, because on game day, I knew I had done everything possible. Early in my career as a young player, you didn't know what your routine was yet. You didn't know what you needed. I wasn't a fullback in college. I was a running back. Mm-hmm. And then before that, I was a linebacker. So every team, I was transitioning into a new role. And then when I first started playing linebacker or fullback, it wasn't pretty. Training camp, I was taking the hits. I was trying to figure out how to do that role. But as I got going, I just kept learning and soaking in from Jerome Felton and coaches. And then I learned what that was. So when I became a vet, the amount of effort that went into my workouts in the off season, I showed up to training camp. I didn't have to worry about my body, because I could just worry about football because I was in shape. And then once we got into season, it was just kind of letting it go, letting muscle memory take over and playing fast.
Well, I think that's so important too, whether you're transitioning to a different level, transitioning to a different position, or just staying in your same position at your same level, finding ways to be a great teammate, finding ways to be valuable to your team. And I know, especially as a fullback, special teams guy, those are like the the pedestal of team guys. Those are the guys that are finding ways to be valuable. I think of, Jim Harbaugh, the Michigan coach. The story goes that he was drafted, I think, in the first round as a quarterback, but he asked Coach Ditka to play special teams. He just wanted to be valuable to the team, at least early on. And then he made a tackle, and Ditka said that wasn't very good. That wasn't a good thing to have a backup quarterback on special teams. But finding ways to be valuable, that's important.
Yeah, I mean, look, some of the best players I have in high school right now, and even when I played at teammates, you'll be looking for, hey, I need a guy at scout team right now, and normally it's those guys that have this deep burning passion to win, and are normally your best athletes too. They're just those special kind that are just running in to help, and that's what separates a good player from a great player. Is they are a great player, but man, team success is first, because with team success comes individual success. I'm sure we've all heard that line at some point in our career, but the guys that really soak that in and believe, man, if this team has success, the scouts will be here, and all the things I want will, fall into line, fall into my vision that I have starts with my team.
Yeah, that's a great point. And a lot of times we just get caught up on talent. Talent doesn't always equal good. And so, you might be a talented athlete, but you're not very good for your team. And I see this all the time, a wide receiver, they just look at if I'm catching the ball or not, I had a good game or not. And they don't think about, how you're coming off the line. Are you getting the defense to bite on your route?
Right.
Are you opening up a second level for the running back or whatever? Are you doing the little things when you're not catching balls that leads to team success? And not everybody sees that.
100%. I found that special with Sean Payton in New Orleans is you'd come in, and most teams you go to, if you're anywhere in the fourth round and before, probably you're safe, right? You're going to be around. It's almost a pride thing where they're not going to get rid of you. I feel like for them. Whereas in New Orleans, we'd have second rounders coming in that, were resistant to play special teams or refused to block because they, like you said, they wanted to catch the ball or they wanted to do their job. Whereas that's not how it was in New Orleans. You were playing special teams. You're not a second rounder. You're a rookie, or you're an asset to the team in that phase. So that was a good locker room because you had a lot of selfless guys that had been around and, had been high draft picks or been making good contracts, and we're still playing special teams. We saw the value because we won a lot of football games on that phase.
Well, we will get right back to Zach in just a moment, but I would remind you, speaking of good teammates, good leaders, people that, are valuable to their team. Our episode today is made possible by theleadershipplaybook.com. We all want strong and healthy cultures. The best way to have a good culture is by having great teammates and positive leaders. And that's where theleadershipplaybook.com can help you out. Get 25% off the price when you use coupon code CHOICE, as in success is a choice. So whether you're a coach, administrator, parent, or student athlete, you'll want to visit theleadershipplaybook.com and use coupon code CHOICE to get your 25% off. So, Coach, you've got all these athletes on your team now. You're trying to mold them into a team. I think football is the ultimate team sport. You're trying to mold all these young men into a team. Are there some things that you found that work better than others? Are there some things that you found for team building, whether it's activities, programs, or just your everyday, the things that you're doing to help them put their self on the back burner and focus more on team?
I wish there was a secret sauce. It's kind of the same thing with training. You're not going to walk in and we're not going to be doing some special lift where it's like, this is the lift that gets us faster. It's just it's the daily deposits that we're going to do. Right now the varsity guys lift at 6:15 in the morning. I feel like the biggest thing we've done I've done, this is going to be a me thing, and it's rare, was I brought in the right staff, right? I brought in guys from the beginning that were I said, I just want good people because I can teach them football. And I was fortunate to find good people that also knew football. So I got to give a lot of credit to those guys because it's not just me. Those guys, again, are all teaching and preaching the same message. So it does have a trickle-down effect because everything starts at the top, right? You got to have good coaches that are setting the right example. Then it goes down to the locker room. And then we're all preaching the same things about we win games in the locker room. So we're trying to pass the torch to the kids to lead themselves. We'll keep them in order. Their role is to take this torch and say, that's how we do things around here. We keep our locker room clean. We clean up after we lift. If we go on the road, win or lose, it looks better than we found it. So it's those small things that just end up adding up at the end. And you're not going to win a state championship week one. But, man, if you just keep getting better and staying consistent, as brutal as it can be sometimes, by the end of the season, you're going to be seeing a lot of success.
Are there some intentional things you've done? You mentioned, trying to get your athletes to lead themselves or take ownership in some things for your program. Are there some things where you facilitate that, where you intentionally give them opportunities to lead themselves? Are there ways that you're teaching them how to be leaders, as opposed to, a lot of times in high school, hey, Zach's a good leader because he says yes sir, no sir, doesn't steal from Walmart, and is a pretty good athlete. Like, that's a good leader. Are you doing things to intentionally help develop that leadership on your team?
You'll see those moments, and I'll leave them open to where there's kind of that you can see there's an opportunity. And when they don't take them, I will intentionally grab a kid who I think wanted to take that moment or should have. I can see he's a leader. He just hasn't taken that step yet because they're young, and sometimes they just don't know that they're ready for that. Or maybe they're a sophomore, or maybe they're a junior that they don't want to step on toes yet. You have to remind them that, this team can go as far as this locker room wants it to go. And those are opportunities that you need to take. I know we'll talk about Tate here in a little bit, but Tate was, a captain his sophomore and junior year, and he wasn't afraid to step up in those moments, and guys respected him because he was a lot like Drew in the way he worked. It was, relentless, and he did things the right way on and off the field. He treated people right. So when he spoke, people listened, and that's kind of what you want to make sure you're having those, on the side, intentional talks with a few athletes, and just say, hey man, look, that's your opportunity. Take advantage of that if you want to, if you choose to. If not, I understand. We need followers too. Yeah.
Well, since you brought Tate up, let's go there for a few minutes. For people that don't know, a tragic incident at Oxford High School in 2021. A gunman, a student, killed 4 students there at Oxford, wounded a number more, and your star player Tate was one of those people that was killed in that tragedy. You've already mentioned how good of a leader he was. He was very well thought of by so many people, recruited by a number of schools. And since then, a number of big time schools have, paid homage to him as well. As a coach, when you go through, you have it doesn't even have to be your star player, but you have someone that's so well liked. How do you handle that kind of tragic? We're all used to, all right, someone gets hurt. We're all used to like the adversity we talk about in sports, but you're never truly ready for that kind of adversity, that kind of traumatic experience. As a coach, how do you lead your guys after that? What do you kind of do when something that's totally unexpected like that occurs?
Yeah. We kind of, built the plane as we were flying it. There's no rubric, there's nothing. And I think as coaches, we'll always look back and kick ourselves on certain ways. We wish we'd done this, we wish we'd done that. But to me, it was just, we're going to love on each other. We're going to make sure we're together constantly after that happens. We'll go to the Big Ten championship game. We'll go to, the Legacy Center. We have a center here that has like bowling and all the fun stuff. But we just tried to stay together, as much as we could. The worst thing you do is be alone. Tate was a phenomenal leader. Tate was a phenomenal person. And I knew all those students had also been through an experience as well. So they needed just as much attention, and it was, it wasn't easy. In this season, you kind of had to put some of the things that you believe in as a coach, accountability, and being a little bit more hard on them on the back burner for a long time. And it's tough, because those guys wanted to win for Tate, and it was a lot to overcome. I'm proud of those kids. They went back to school. They put the shoulder pads back on and went out and played football. So there's a lot of things that I admire them for. We just grinded. Again, I was fortunate that we had built the coaching staff and had built enough culture on this team to be able to go through something like this. Because if you're going to build culture, then you got to believe in it.
Well, they're on the web, they're on the screen for those of you watching, or if you're not watching, if you're listening to this on the Success is a Choice podcasting network, you can check out the website 42strongtate.org, 42strongtate.org, and check out their foundation. Tell us a little bit, Coach, about that foundation, the mentoring, the characters, the character building, all the stuff that kind of Tate stood for, and his legacy, lives on after him. Talk a little bit about that the website, but the foundation, 42strongtate.org.
Yeah, so 42 Strong was a peer-to-peer mentorship program that started shortly after. I think November 30th was the event, and I think January 2nd or something was our launch day. So it wasn't long after we were meeting at the library and kind of throwing this together. We're just trying to get people together. I was always impressed by Buck and Sherry. Buck especially. I was around him more. It's Tate's dad. He would talk about how he wasn't mad at the shooter. This guy should have had a friend. Somebody should have been there for him. As a community, we failed him. So we can't fail anybody else in this community. So we're not trying to change the world all at once. We're just trying to change and help Oxford right now, because we know the ripple effect that will have. Just starting here in our hometown, you got kids that go to college and will lead the right way. You got kids that'll be future business leaders and influential people. And I think with the amount that these kids have been through, there's something special in store for them. They've been through the hardest. Now they can really get through anything. They're resilient. So again, 42 Strong, we're right now starting our second year. We're right around 350 students signed up, which is incredible. We've grown from 250 last year. So it's a really good program, monthly events. And we pair a mentee with a mentor, and they're paired for a year, and we help them along the way. And it's been something pretty special in this community.
Well, I think that's very important because it doesn't take a tragedy. It shouldn't take a tragedy to say, hey, what can we do to make our community, our school a little bit better? And you may not be able to do everything, but you can do something. And so, you don't have to wait for a tragedy. Unfortunately, that transpired at Oxford at your school, your community. And it doesn't have to be 42strongtate.org. You don't have to do exactly the stuff that you're doing at your school with this foundation, but it could be something else. And like you said, this shooter, you can't prevent everything in life, and there's nothing perfect that if I did X, Y, and Z, then X, Y, and Z never happens. But there's always something we can do. And we've seen this in a lot of schools with bullying. We've seen this in just the way we talk to people, and you've seen it as a coach or people in your life that have breathed, encouragement into you. They didn't, your 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade teachers or coaches didn't necessarily make you a pro player, but they might've helped you get to the next day, help you get to the next class where you were encouraged, give you some hope, some inspiration. And so sometimes that's all it takes is catching people being good. And so definitely 42strongtate.org. So coming out of this has been, we're going on a couple of years here since this tragedy. It's still obviously it's something that will never go away from your team. It'll always be there. But do you find that you're able to talk about that with your players? You're able to say, hey, the way Tate was, that's the way we're looking to be. Or you're able to say, hey, probably not, hey, let's play for Tate. Let's practice for Tate. But do you still find as a coach that you utilize some of his example and that's prevalent on your kids' minds?
Yeah, I think Tate was such a strong leader in our community that they would take that the right way. Tate just won our Male Athlete of the Year award, so that'll be presented, and this won't air till a couple weeks, so it's okay. I got that out, but he was a stud, and he has examples on film. I remember Clarkston, who's our rival, their head coach for a long time, came up and it was in awe by who Tate was, because we had our opening play of the game. Unfortunately, it was a big break down the middle for them, but Tate ran this guy down from 75 yards. It didn't catch him, but didn't stop till the goal line. He's like, that doesn't happen. So again, you're going back to effort, I'll use guys for examples as effort all day long, because at the end of you're not going to have the talent that some kids have, but you can always run until the goal line or run until the whistle or do the small things that just become habits in your life. And just to go back to the 42 strong, if anybody listening or watching this wants to do one thing, just go to the website, pick one of Tate's traits and try to implement that in your life. Maybe it's a trait that maybe you're not strong in or you struggle with. Pick one of them, just implement that. And that, again, is just going to change the world just a little bit. And that's all you need to do.
Yeah. Awesome. You don't have to do, once again, you don't have to do everything, but do something. Do something. Can you change the world around you just in a small part? That's awesome. Now Tate wore 42. You wore 42 when you were at Oxford. Now, did you know him before you went to coach there?
I knew his older brother. So he has three brothers, Trent, Ty, and then there's Tate. Tate's the youngest. And so I came back for an off season while Coach Raleigh was still coaching Bud, and I did their training. I own a few sports performance gyms now in Michigan, and did their summer training and did their speed work. And his older brother, you can tell why Tate was a special kid, because you have Ty and Trent the oldest, who are just workhorses and good people. And obviously this is coming down from their parents, Buck and Sherry, as well. But Tate kind of got the best of both worlds. Trent was a grinder, and Ty was just like your throwback. I'm trying to think of a Darren McCarty, if you remember Darren McCarty. Again, I'm going back to hockey. So he got the best of both of those worlds, and it created something special. But I remember coming in, and Tate wanted number 25, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but it was his dad's college number. We didn't have it. We just got new jerseys, and for some reason we didn't have number 25 or 24. And I said, well, what about I'm kind of leaning him towards, hey, what about 42 for his sophomore year? Because I knew he was a special athlete. And I selfishly wanted him to have that number. And so, yeah, all right, fine. So he took it. And then the next year he texted me on Jersey Day and said, hey, coach, can you save 42 for me? So I'm like, yes, he's converted. But now forever Tate will be number 42 in Oxford.
Well, very cool. You had mentioned your staff. You've mentioned that a couple of times. What do you do as a head coach? You got a good staff around you, good people around you. Are there some things that you do to help facilitate, maximizing their strengths, minimizing their weaknesses, but just letting them be good coaches?
Yeah. I think we all have coming in what we want. Like this, I want to run this defense, I want to run this offense, but you got to give them a hallway to allow them to coach within. You can't just give them, this is the exact position group I want. This is exactly how I want this done. If it's not done that way, I'm a micromanage and do everything for you. Why do you have coaches if you're going to do that, right? So while I have the schemes I like and the systems I like, I want their input on things, and I want to give them an alley to work in, right? It might not be a drill that I necessarily love, but I'm going to let them fail and have successes in finding their ways to get there. Because they might have a drill that I never thought of, right? Or they might have a way of teaching, and even giving them the floor in team meetings, right? If I don't have a message, I'm not going to waste the kids' time. But I'll ask the coaches, anybody got anything today? And sometimes they've just been waiting, right? They see something that they think needs addressed, and they believe in what you're doing, and they just want to get the floor for a second. Hey, take it, man. Like we're all. If I could put myself on a level playing field at all times, I would. There are times where obviously you have to say this is why we're doing it, and that's it. But that's rare, right? Because if you're on the same page and you have enough feedback, communication with your coaches, there shouldn't be a lot of back and forth and arguments on things.
Well, I know you're still a young head coach, but if there's people out there that maybe are players wanting to get into coaching or assistant coaches right now, wanting to be a head coach, are there some things that you would give them for making that move into being a head coach? Obviously you're still young, you're still, learning all these things. But are there some things that you wish you knew 3 or 4 years ago about coaching?
To me, you'll hear a lot about high school players is that, you got to keep it super simple. And these kids can handle a lot more, right? Again, if your expectations on the front end are there and you're a good teacher, it's just like if you went to a doctor and they tell you this crazy thing and you can't understand it. But then there's those guys that just say, hey, listen, you got a canker sore or whatever, right? They make it simple to, we're like, oh, okay, cool. You got to make hard things simple. That doesn't mean your playbook has to be simple, because these kids can absorb a lot. They know how to run Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, do schoolwork. These kids are smart beyond anything I think I was back then. So as far as absorbing information, they're there. So if you have a playbook, as long as you're a good teacher, you can get that in. The other thing I would say is believe in yourself, right? So last year, I felt like with everything that happened, with the school, obviously going back to the events on November 30th, we weren't able to get as much as we wanted in the summer. So I felt like we had to rush during the season to get the plays in that we wanted. And then so that in turn changed my practice schedules. And I went away from, because I like to keep things short. We're going to get 12 plays on offense, this many on defense, and it keeps kids fresh. It doesn't get monotonous. And last year it was just ongoing run-on practices, and we got nothing that we wanted done. So all the things that I believed in coming into football, we had done the year before, we went away from. So stick to what you believe in. You're going to have coaches that have done things different ways. Again, keeping everybody on level playing field, taking input, but making sure that at the end of the day, this is your squad. Do it the way you want.
So we'll get you out on this last question. You played with a number of great players. Obviously, Drew Brees is an all-time great. If you could think back to one player that you wish you had played with, college, pro, but somebody that you wish you had played with, can you name that player? Do you have a player that you wish that, man, this would have been awesome to play with this person?
That's a good one. I'm going to go with my brothers. They both played college football. Prescott played at Michigan State, Ben ended at Michigan State. Prescott was redshirted while I was a senior at SMU, but we never really got to play together. And I always thought that would be really cool to have, a sibling to play with, because it's kind of the Bash brother mentality. But no, he was both of them were fullbacks as well. So that'd be it. I played with so many cool players. I'm looking back, in Minnesota it was Adrian Peterson, and in New Orleans, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, Drew Brees is the quarterback, Ben Watson's at tight end, like Michael Thomas. I could just go on, and just so many awesome personalities and different leadership styles that I got to experience and have kind of molded me into the man I am today. And still to this day, when I would have a kid, those guys are reaching out, congratulating you. And it's awesome to have that football family that really never goes away. Once you're in the fraternity, they're always there for you.
Well, he's Zach Line, the head coach at Oxford High School in Michigan, and you can follow him. Go ahead, click that follow button on Instagram or on Twitter at ZLine48, at ZLine48. Coach, we appreciate your time. Continued success there at Oxford. Keep building up young people, making a difference. Awesome. Small differences, small impacts lead up to a big impact. So we definitely appreciate your time. And for everybody listening, if you would, please kindly smash that like button, share this show with somebody that you think would enjoy it. Leave us a little 5-star rating and review. You don't even have to like me or the podcast, but you like Zach and you like what he stands for. So say, hey, this episode with Zach was awesome. But until next time, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?